Hi guys, so we're looking to select shafts for making wooden arrows for traditional shooting. Now there's a few things you need to think about before you even buy any wood to make your arrows. The first thing you've got to consider is the woods that are available in your neck of the woods. For instance, in Asia, most commonly used wood is bamboo. But there's a few others. Australia, apparently the most commonly used woods are gum tree, blue mountain ash, and some kind of mangrove root that gets used quite often as well. America, you're looking at mostly pines and cedars. In Europe, you're looking at almost exclusively German spruce, and in the UK, you're looking at German spruce and the cedars. So what you've got to do is you've got to have a look around and see what's available. Do a little bit of research. For instance, in Australia, for a good hard-wearing arrow for higher poundage, you're probably going to be looking at wood from the gum tree. In the Americas, you're going to be looking at cedars for a hard-wearing, high poundage bow. You're looking at cedars. In Europe, again, almost exclusively German spruce. In UK, for high poundage bows, you're going to be looking at cedar again. Now, my own personal preference would be, and I've done a little bit of research, and it seems that you can source cedar almost everywhere, and I would recommend, if you can get hold of it, use cedar, Port Orford, Port Rose, white or red cedar. It's an aromatic, which means it's got a perfume of its own. It actually gives off an aroma because it's got a very high oil content. And I love the smell of it. But that high oil content, especially in higher poundage bows, gives a really good, high impact resistant, wear resilient arrow. So that would be my own personal recommendation. If you can get hold of it, get hold of cedar. But again, you're going to have to do a bit of research and use what you can get. Now, the second thing you need to take into account is the draw weight of the bow which you're going to be shooting these out of. Now, so that's going to dictate the diameter of the shaft you're going to be using. Now, as a general rule of thumb, for bow weights up to about 50 pound, you're going to be looking to use 5/16 diameter shafts. That's about 8mm. Up to 70 pound draw weight, you're going to be looking at 11/32, which is about 9mm. 70 to 100 pounds draw weight, you're looking at 23/64. If you're going any higher than 100 pounds, you're going to have to start looking towards sourcing something in 11, 12, 13mm, and that actually might involve making your own shafts from the square, as it were. So that's wood choice, diameter. Next thing you've got to consider is the type of shooting you're doing. Now, if you're hunting, you're going to use a heavier shaft. You're going to need, even if you're only shooting a 40 or a 50 pound draw weight bow, you're going to need to use a heavier shaft just for that impact resistance. If you're shooting target, you're going to need a lighter, thinner shaft, so you're going to go with a 5/16, even at higher draw weight bows. So there is some leeway that you've got to think about. Now, that's one of the reasons why I like the cedars, because it gives you that little bit more leeway in terms of bow weight. For instance, in 5/16, you could extend the bow weight up to about 60 pounds. In 11/32, you can extend that from the 70 up to about the 80-85 pound draw weight mark. And in 23/64, you can extend out to about 110-120 pound draw weight. So there we go. So so that's the first thing you've got to do before you buy any shafts. Once you've bought your shafts, let's have a look at the next stage. That's actually physical inspection and some of the things you need to do. Alright guys. So what are we doing? Well, as a result of an inquiry by our friend in the land down under, Backyard Archer, we're going to have a look at selecting arrow shafts to make a nice set of wooden arrows. Now, before we do that, the first thing I'm going to say is wooden arrows are consumables. So, if you're the sort of person who gets attached to things like arrows, like I do to a certain extent, be aware they are going to break, you are going to lose them. And the more effort you put into them, the more you're going to become emotionally attached. For instance, these arrows here, I've had this set for quite a while. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half left out of a set of 12. And these were a really nice set of arrows that I made. They were all spined to within, it was like 1/8 of a pound, a tiny amount. They were all basically, if I remember off the top of my head, they were all 38¼ pound spine. Very, very close, very little in it. Weight-wise, they all come in at between 365 and 374 grains. Now, to give you an idea of what that weighs, 15 grains is a gram. So they were all spined within 7 grains of each other. Really nice set of arrows. But if I'd been precious about them, I don't think I would ever have shot them. But they shoot really, really nicely. So just be aware, they are, with them being wood, they're a lot more consumable than modern materials. Anyway, that said, right, so the first thing I do when I get a new batch of arrows, if I'm going to be making, well, aiming to make a decent set out of them, I've lost some, oh, there we are. The first thing I do is I batch weigh them and separate them out, and so out of that set of arrows we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sets. Now, generally speaking, I try to get them weighed into sets of 10 grains. So like 270 to 279, 280 to 289, 290 to 99. So 10 grain batches. Sometimes you'll get a set. Now I can't remember what weight these ones are, but these are like, there's like one of one, like there might be one that's in the 270s, 2 in the 280s, 1 in the 290s, that sort of thing. So that's the majority. So they don't actually come together very well, although they may, they'll make practice arrows. And we've got another set here, which I think is this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we've got a set of 4. Right, so we've got a set of 5 and a set of 6 there. These will all be within the same, I can't remember, I think these are 320s, and these might be 340, 350s, I can't remember exactly, but these are sort of in between the two. So it may be, as we go on, I may be able to transplant one of these to make a set of another setup of 6. So that's what we're working towards, is a really nice set of 6 arrows, and there's potentially 2 sets of 6 there. So that's the first thing to do, is batch weigh them. The next thing you've got to do, I mean you could do this first actually, but I do it as the second stage, is I visually inspect everything. Now thankfully with this one I haven't found anything, but the sort of thing you're looking for, you might, if you inspect the shaft, you may find, like say for instance, a black or dark grey or grey line going down the arrow, following the line of the grain. Now if you get something like that, basically what it is, it's damage from a fungus. Now don't worry, the fungus has been killed off by the wood being treated and it being felled and treated and what have you, but the damage has still been there. And if you've got something like that, which is a grey to dark grey line, following the grain, throw it away, because what's going to happen, and usually it'll happen within 4 or 5 shots being taken, is the arrow will start to split. So it becomes dangerous. So there's absolutely no point making it into an arrow at all, so you would fling that away, basically. The next thing you would look for would be what you would call a shiver. And a shiver basically is a bruise. Now, if for instance, if the wood that the tree that this shaft came from was grown next to a quarry, what can happen is if the quarry uses dynamite, the concussion from the dynamite can actually bruise the tree. Thunder close by, the shockwave from thunder can do it. Lightning strikes can do it. The most common cause is one tree, when it gets felled, falls against another tree and basically bruises the tree. And what happens, again, where you would see it, is you'd hold it in the light, you get the light just right, and you would turn the arrow. I mean, I can't do this now, I'll get the lad to do it. You would turn the shaft, and if you see a sort of a silvery, shimmery, glittery section in the grain, that means you've got a shiver. Now, it's not a great problem. You can still make arrows out of wood that have got shivers, provided it doesn't go the entire length. Usually there don't be something like that. Pardon. But you would relegate that to the practice pile. So that would be good. The next thing you would do is you would orientate, you would check the orientation of the grain itself. Now this is important, or it's going to become very important when it comes to spining the arrows. So what you do, I'll put my glasses on for this bit, I got the lad to do this the other week, and you would check the end of the arrow and find where the grain is running. One way you can do it, if you can't see the grain very well, is to get a pointy knife and just scrape it across the end, and you will feel, you can even hear where the grain is. And then you would mark it accordingly. So you put a mark on there, and now what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that it runs the same all the way through the shaft. So you would check the orientation of that, if you can actually see it. Right, so there. So then carefully flip it over so it's not turning, and check that the orientation on the other end is the same. And it is. You see the marks on the end there? So they're both the same. So basically, you would mark both ends and then check, like so, and then just flip it over while making sure it doesn't turn in your hand. And check the, now that one's slightly off, I think. We'll check that one again. Turn that over. That was the way I did it. It's slightly off. It's a tiny, tiny amount. Now that's not so bad, but if it was, like, say, at 90 degrees, that would mean that the shaft had twisted when it was growing, and it was cut from a twisted piece of wood, which would be no good. That would become a practice arrow. But generally speaking, they're okay. Just check this last one. Take the orientation. Turn it over. Yeah. Now that's important because you need the grain, yeah, to be in the vertical position when you put the knock on. And the knock has to be crosswise to the grain. Yeah? So the string follows in the same direction as the grain. That allows the spine of the arrow to flex correctly with the grain instead of against the grain. Because you want the grain to be vertical, so that as the grain travels through, it flexes against the vertical grain and not against because otherwise if it flexes against the horizontal grain, it actually it creates inconsistent flex within the shaft, and you can actually feel the difference if you do that. You can feel how different it is. Yeah, anyway. Right, so there we go. So we've checked the grain. Now what we're doing? Just heard them next door shout, it distracted me. Right, yeah, so now what we're going to do is going to check the consistency, the concentricity and the straightness. Now generally speaking, unless you've cut your own shafts and created your own shafts, them being straight is not going to be a problem. When you buy the shafts from an archery suppliers, they are going to be as straight as you need them to be. And from personal experience, a slightly bent arrow is going to straighten itself out after a couple of dozen shots. After it's been fired a couple of dozen times from the bow and hit the target, it's going to straighten itself out. The shock of being fired from the bow and hitting the target will straighten it out, and it'll end up being perfectly straight. So don't worry about that. Where you have a problem is if you buy a shaft or a shaft arrives and it's S-shaped like that, that is a complete no-no. The chances are you can't straighten it out. If it's just like that, you can apply a little bit of heat over a steaming pot of water and actually let it settle and it'll straighten itself out. But it's S-shaped, you're going to have problems. Bin that. It's not worth the effort. The next thing you're going to do is check the concentricity. Now, a lot of arrow shafts, depending on the wood that they're made from, these ones are made from hemlock. Now, hemlock is particularly prone to what I'm going to show you next, but it can be used to your advantage. And basically what happens when the wood is cut and then it's shaped into dowel, the outer surfaces are actually dry out and shrink a little bit, whereas the inside doesn't. And what happens, I'll see if I can demonstrate this. See how it falls over? Now that's not to do with it being straight, that's the concentricity of the shaft. Now, here's something. Let that roll back, now forward. Now, what you're going to do is carefully, what we're looking for, now it's now laid on its flat, on one of the flat sides. The top side is a flat side and it's laid on a flat side. Now what we want is for that mark we put through the grain to be, at the moment, horizontal. So we're just going to lift it up carefully. You can probably see it, I can't at the moment. I'll put my glasses on. It has to be put on the right way up and not upside down. There we go. So the mark is horizontal to the concept. So let it roll again. Let it settle. So it's settling onto the flat side, and we carefully pick it up, check the mark, and it's horizontal. That is fine. That's perfectly okay, because when you turn it again to put the knock on, so that the grain is vertical, you're getting that flex in the right direction. So there we go. Right, that's basically all there is to shaft selection. If you follow those little steps there, you'll end up with the best possible shafts for your arrows to make a really nice set of arrows. Now there are other things to do that you can do to those shafts to make them perfect, for instance balancing, things like that. But that's not about shaft selection, that's about the actual making of the arrows. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Backyard archer, specifically and particularly, I hope that answered your question. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe, keep slinging the sticks, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers guys.